I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. You know, we always have guests on our show who are very interesting. And in fact, this particular guest, Amos Knoll, has been on our show many times. And there's a reason that I have him on the show, because he's written books that are so appropriate for the times we're living in now. I just finished reading a book that he wrote, which was called Mama, Why Am I Black? And I want to read it to you for a second. You know, he says freedom and equality, and I'm going to just push this over for a second so I can read it. And let's start it again. And he says, freedom and equality go together. It is your duty as a citizen of the human race to honor those words. And we must also respect them so our new generation can inherit what those words stand for in their hearts and turn and pass them on. If we don't, liberty and human rights are one generation away from being taken from us. Freedom is like love, okay? You must cherish it, you must nurture it and respect it. Don't let anything distract you from your love of liberty, justice, and the right to pursue happiness. And that is exactly what Amos Knoll is doing. You know, he's had a lot of trouble with banks and other people. I mean, they haven't made it easy for him. He's a publisher of Knoll Publishing Company, and to get those books on the table, to get those books on Barnes and Nobles and places like that have not been easy. And today I want to talk a little bit about the banks and how they're treating him. And Amos, let our audience know why you're having so much trouble with banks, because you need that money to support you and to continue writing books. And what is it about the banks that is hurting you?
The problem with the banks today is the banks are too smart for a simple old person like me. They have all the answers. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. Today, the banks, years ago, when you walk into a bank, you built up a relationship, you and the banker. The manager had some authority. Today, the banker has no authority. It's some clerk up in the back office who doesn't know anything else. They make up rules. They have also logarithm. I'll give you a good example. In my case, I'll get out of it. I'm not too worried about it. I don't have nightmares. I'm putting a syndication together because selling my books is not the problem, is to get them out to the public. It's all marketing, like the pillow guy. It's marketing, marketing. So far, without exception, and I'm not exaggerating, everybody who sees my books falls in love with them. Because when I write a story, it really comes from my heart, the way I really feel. Yet on the other hand, I live in a real world. I know what's going on. And I give you a good example. When you call the banks up, well, we got coronavirus. We're here to help you. Here's what we will do. I'll give you a good example. And I'll mention the banks. I don't care. They don't like it, let them do what they want to. Take the bank, Wells Fargo, which I have my business account and my also credit account. I had a line of credit, I think about $7,000, $8,000. All of a sudden, and I've never been late, and this goes for everybody, by the way. I think Peter's just coming aboard, by the way. Okay. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Let me interrupt you for a second, Amos. I want to introduce Peter Ticktin. And I've been so privileged to have Peter Ticktin on my show. He's a lawyer and he works with Amos, and he's just an absolutely wonderful person. So, you know, welcome to you, Peter Ticktin, for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's just absolutely a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm so sorry. I'm running a little late, but I'm here now. There's no sooner than now.
Yeah, and we just started, so it's okay. No problem. And now let's go back to Amos. Amos was talking, Peter, about the banks and the way they treat him, because needless to say, he needs the money to support the writing of his books. He's very prolific, and he's written books that are just terrific. So I want to just continue Amos, tell our audience a little bit about how you're being treated by the banks.
Well, it's myself, in all honesty, I'll come out of it one way or another. I'm syndicating and putting it together. It all takes time. But I really feel bad for the young couple that's starting off in life, for let's say they're 20, 30 years old, and the bank threatens them, yeah, we're going to hurt your credit. Not in those words, but that's what they're basically saying. But here's an example. I'm going to actually use cases of mine, and if the banks don't like it, they know what they can do. I'm going to use a bank like Wells Fargo. I have my private credit cards there, and I have my business account. And Wells Fargo cut my credit down from 10,000 or whatever it was, I'm not sure the amount, down to the outstanding debt. Now, I use my credit cards literally to buy inventory books, but I'm out of them now anyway. Mm-hmm. So the bank cut me down. So all of a sudden, when I owed, let's say, 20%, 25% on the credit card, by them knocking it down to my outstanding balance, it means all of a sudden I owed 98%, literally. Bank like Citicard, the same thing. Bank like Discover Card, Ciccone Bank, I owed, I think at 9,000, 10,000 credit. I only spent $170, nothing. And they cut my credit down to the outstanding balance. So all of a sudden, on my score, there's a reason why I'm saying a little background. My score from 780 or 90, whatever it was, went down to 427. Now, if I would be out trying to start my life over again, I'm a young kid and I have a wife, whatever you have, all of a sudden, no bank will touch you, no lenders. Then the bank can come back saying, oh, we'll give you a loan, but you got to pay 30%, you got to pay a fee, etc. But what bothers me is that they advertise, they're here to help you. Another example, when I spoke to Wells Fargo, they said, we'll work out a deal with you, Mr. Knoll. You can make $48 a month payment, which I said, fine, I have no problems with that. And no interest, we wipe off all the late fees or whatever you have. I've never been late, except now I decided not to make any payments because I got to keep the business going, not worried about the bank, because they did enough damage to my credit just by knocking it down. And the banks know exactly what happens when they knock down the credit to the outstanding balance. Then I asked them a question. I said, okay, I can live with that. What about, how is it going to affect my credit? And they says, well, it's going to show every month late. I started to laugh. I said, are you joking? What incentive do I have to pay, even bother paying you off? You screwed up my credit. Yes, I borrowed that money to buy inventory because of what's happening in the economy. I don't control the economy, so I expect you to work with me. Well, this is the way we do it. Another bank, Discover Card. They call me up. I don't hide away from the telephone. I pick them straight on. And they said, to start off, Mr. Knoll, you're a month behind. Would you like, we want to make the payment. Are you ready to make the payment? I said, no. Oh, we are taping the conversation. They give me the little pitch behind it. So I say to them, great. Well, I'm taping the conversation too. I'm not, by the way, but I wouldn't mind doing it. They said, oh, no, we don't give you permission. I says, what do you mean you don't give me permission? I'm not giving you permission to tape my conversation. Well, with a bank. And I say to them, frankly, I got this from Gone with the Wind. Frankly, dear, I don't give a crap. Right. If you can tape it, I can tape it. And that's the way I feel about it. Somehow they think they're way above you. They can do what they want to. They work at deals when they say they want to help you, that they're more interested, it's whatever they want on their agenda, not what you want. So
let me stop you for a second, Amos. Let me stop you for a second. I want to go to Peter for a moment. Peter, you're a lawyer, and I'm sure you've had cases that are similar, perhaps, and tell me yes or no to the ones that Amos is dealing with today. We're living in an inflation. I'm talking about something a little bit different, but I want to talk about that because there is so much happening because of this coronavirus, and people are taking advantage of others. Now, have you ever dealt with a situation like Amos has with the banks?
Oh,
or
yes.
tell me about it. I'd like to
Okay.
hear about it.
Well, for one thing, in the state of Florida, we are, if not number one, I think we are number one in terms of the firms that handle mortgage foreclosure defense. When we started to fight the banks in 2008, we didn't even know how you were going to defend these cases because nobody ever won foreclosure cases before. Okay, any lawyer defending somebody in foreclosure would basically just see if they could find some mistake that the bank made, but there was no real defenses. And my office, we were in it to win it. A lot of people got into mortgage foreclosure, a lot of law firms figuring, I'll keep you in your house as long as I can. You just pay me so much a month or whatever, and I'll just keep defending the case until we lose it. I don't practice law that way. We are in our cases to win those cases. It's actually unethical to just cause delay. So we fight those cases, and and Amos, you're going to really like what we did with the banks, but because we ended up unearthing the robo-signers. We were the firm that did that. It put us on the front page of every major newspaper in the country, including the New York Times and the Washington Post a couple of times, and so on. Actually, 3 times for the New York Times, because we were able to find all this wrongdoing. We took 150 depositions all around the United States. And as a result, we were able to give these deposition transcripts or copies of them to all the attorney generals of the United States, the 50 different states. And they went after the banks, and they settled their claim based on our deposition transcripts for $30 billion. Not a million, but 30 million, but 30 billion. Of course, we never got a dime out of it. They didn't even pay us for the transcripts. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that's because we were fighting the cases, and we did develop defenses. But the banks can be beat. The one thing that we talk about when we talk about banks, we need to realize that we're always dealing with a legal fiction. There are no banks. There are no corporations. Okay, I mean, you can't go out and slap General Motors on the back and say good job. There is no General Motors. It's only people, and we make what we call a legal fiction. We have statutes and we have other laws that basically have created this myth. It's sort of like a trust is the same thing. You can't go out and touch it. It's only a trustee, a person, beneficiaries, other people. Same thing with a corporation. You've got your officers of the corporation, you've got your directors. And so when we talk about the evil of banks, what we're really talking about, is those people who are running those particular banks that have that particular mentality that are causing that much harm to people, as opposed to every person that just happens to be running a bank. You've got your good people, you've got your bad people. And but some of the things that Amos is talking about are particularly harmful, but there are ways of dealing with it. When they start making bad credit reports about your credit so that it starts causing you to get into one of those systems, there are laws that exist, federal laws, as a matter of fact, that the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Fair Debt Reporting Act. And these are actually statutes that my firm has brought claims against banks for reporting people to be of bad credit when in fact they were of good credit. I mean, in the proper case, it has to be one where they've actually wronged somebody that was right. They can say whatever they want as long as it's true.
Yeah. Peter, I'm going to stop you for a second. So we heard what Amos talked about. Now, are you defending him at this point? And do you think that he has an advantage? Because he really is, he's being very aggressive, and he really feels that he deserves, honesty. He deserves to have the banks listen to him and to, help him. Because needless to say, without that money, there is no chance that he's going to do another book. And I got to tell you, that is a shame. So are you in the process of working with him?
I can't comment on that. Maybe somebody in my office is. I haven't been working with
Can I answer the question?
Go ahead, Amos.
I appreciate what you're saying. I didn't ask Peter for any help on that for two reasons. It takes more than a bank. Many years ago, I took on personally one of the biggest banks when I was a developer. Oh my God, it's been 40 years ago. And when I was in depositions, one lie, if they were trying to basically kill me by attrition, every day for 8 hours, deposition. I took them on, one at a time. First I did it without attorneys until one attorney became smart enough and said, Your Honor, Mr. Knoll is not a member of the bar. He can't represent his company, which of course I know I couldn't. So I got an attorney. I won the battle, absolutely, but I lost the war. It all comes down to dollars and cents. Peter is a friend of mine. There are better things for me to not to waste his time. I just want the public to know, don't believe what the banks. They're a bunch of glorified clerks, a lot of them. And I feel bad because the individual people who work there, they're very nice. If they're not, they're afraid they're going to get fired. Always a survey. How was he? Did it answer your question? So those are not the people, all right? It's the policies the banks have. When a bank goes ahead, and I'm going to use myself as an example, never late, paid on time for years and years. Perfect credit as far as that goes. Then all of a sudden, one bank cuts down. It's a logarithm. It's a machine. It's a computer. It's not a human being. Then all of a sudden, my credit goes way, way down. They know if I need money, I can't go to the banks. Okay, so I'm going to syndicate, hopefully with Peter's help on it, and I'll get the money, whatever I need. I don't give up. I got kicked in my head. I was shot. All the different things happened to me in life. It takes more than a lousy Citibank, Wells Fargo, Discover Card, Seconee Bank to get me down. I'm going to write the books. So I'm having a little hard time. If I compare what's going on in the world, Susan, where people can't put food on the table, or right now what's happening to the economy, what the hell do I have to complain about? I really think I'm the luckiest person. I know it sounds corny, but I feel I'm the luckiest person alive. I have a good family. I have a wife. We're going to be married 60 years in February. And like I said once, I have the last word in my house. Yes, dear.
Yeah. Peter, you just heard what he said. Now, I understand. I thought maybe, you're working together, but needless to say, you're not. But again, I want our audience to understand what they're able to do if they're in trouble, with these banks. If you could lay it out just a little bit, start from the beginning. So they walk in your door and they say, I went to the bank. They said no to a loan, and I don't understand why. So a person comes into your office, start with that, and they give you this scenario. What do you tell them?
Every case is different, even though in some ways they're all the same. And so it depends on their particular circumstances and whether or not the factual basis of what they're talking about actually fits into the categories that are prescribed by the law that give us some relief against the bank. So if you see somebody's credit report has, let me just stop for a second. I had this one case which went on, and we were in federal court, we were in state court, and it went on and on, where the bank had made a mistake. And the mistake that they made was that they thought the first payment which they received, actually what it was one bank took over a loan from another bank. And between the two of them, they lost one of the payments. So a payment that was supposed to go to the new bank had been accepted by the old bank, and in terms of this particular debt. So every month they're putting my client down as being a month late. And ultimately with the reporting that they did, they caused my client's credit to tumble. And we then, we fought the bank because my client had major losses due to the fact that they no longer had the credit that they needed in order to be able to proceed with a certain business that they were doing. So it was a measurable amount that they were out. Even then, sometimes there's defenses that the banks have. State laws will not work with federal banks. They're over and above whatever laws the state has. So you have to look to federal laws when you're talking about federal banks, and then the state banks are regulated as well by the state. In fact, there's two different groups of bank regulators. There's federal bank regulators and there's state bank regulators. I've had one client who happened to be a bank regulator at one point, and sure enough, he ended up locking horns with the Connecticut Bank of Commerce. My client has survived the ordeal. The Connecticut Bank of Commerce did not. A lot of these smaller banks, they run into their own problems. And we see this more in mortgage foreclosure as well, sometimes where loans are extended to customers that they know that they shouldn't lend to, but they do lend to. And so that's, as I say, your question is, what does it normally look like when a client comes in? Normally they're in trouble. They're in trouble because they just did not conform in one way or another, and the banks are there. For people that just fall behind on the credit cards, there are some really good companies that deal with credit card debts, and they're in the business to do that. Law firms can do it too, but they don't know the numbers to call and the people to schmooze with or whatever. So there are people, these little companies that, well, some not so little, that deal with with bank debts and credit card debts. They're able to usually settle them all on a 3 or 5 year plan, where the credit cards end up getting cut up. They're no longer, with a pair of scissors, I mean, and they'll settle basically for about 50 cents on the dollar for the total amount, as long as the payments keep coming.
Yeah.
So there are other ways that are even non-legal, not law. But I want to say about Amos, because he's an honest man, and most people are honest. There's a George Bernard Shaw, the man who said youth is wasted on the young, which I'm beginning to believe more and more. He said that the punishment of a liar is not in the least that he cannot be believed, but rather that he cannot believe others.
Yeah.
When we look at a man like Amos, we're looking at an honest man. We're looking at a man who can be fooled because he does believe others.
So you're talking about naivete when you mention Amos, because Amos is a strong man. He's done a lot in his life, and it's been a very up and down situation for him. But when I listen to what you have to say, this is the most important thing: honesty, virtue, all of the things that are necessary, which maybe in this particular time and day, things have changed. Okay. And I think they need somebody like Amos to challenge them. I want to go back to you, Amos, because we talked about the banks, and Peter really described the situation. But I want, we don't have a lot of time. So it is very important that you talk about your books, because your books are special and you keep on writing them. And you're addressing all the issues through these books. So tell us a little bit more about your books, where people can get them, what they meant to you when you wrote them. I'd like to know, and I think the audience would like to know.
Let me start off by first of all saying, I know I'm doing something right, and I'll tell you why. I wrote a song, I shouldn't say I wrote it, I rewrote it, a song by George M. Cohn, Over There, which was very popular in World War I. And in the meantime, And I changed the beat and the wording. In the meantime, I got the copyright if you can see it, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I know it's good because everybody likes it, and I'm making more and more enemies because I'm complimenting Trump. Because instead of saying the Yanks are coming, Trump is coming back in the White House. And so a lot of people resent it, and I got already some threats. And every time I get one, I know I'm doing it right. As far as my books, it's like when I read the book from Peter about Trump, what I liked about it, it's one human being talking about another human being, not talking about a president, not talking about, look, nobody's perfect. If you want to find faults, you're going to find them in me. If I'm out to get you, or Deborah, or Peter, I'm sure you're going to find something. There's no such thing you can't. So I try always in my life, always try to look at the good part of life. Yes, I know there are evil people, but majority of the people are honest. Locks are made, really locks are made for honest people. If you're a cook, you know how to break open the lock. Like one of my new books, besides right now, I mean, I need money to really, for the inventory, I'm converting a lot of my books now to Amazon. And but the Amazon books are not as nice as the cover book that are embossed, and it's just a different in quality, but this is Amazon. But my newest book, one of many, by the way, is Don't Step on the Frog. Now, I don't want to make you guys blush. It's about fluctuation, fart, blowing, whatever you want to call it. I see Peter smiling. It's basically making fun of oneself. Having gas is a normal human function. We all do it. Animals do it. Your dog does it. So I took a lot of different things like don't pull on my finger, or oh, who stepped on a frog? And okay, did you hit the mouse squeak by? So I took a lot of those fairy tales, whatever you want to call them, and I put them in a book. I have right now a girl from Indonesia who's drawing the pictures for me, and I really describe them in detail, you know. And how do you show a fart in a picture? So I told her, well, make it maybe a green color and like different shades coming out. I know it's funny, but then I went to my grandson. By the way, I'm in his room. That's where I got all the turtles and stuff. Great grandson, actually. And I said, Max, I have your bet for $10. And the bet is that and of course I have sounds. You can find a computer of gas, you know, the way it sounds, all the funny things. And I said, if you can listen to it for 2 minutes without smiling, I'll give you $10. So I put it on, and he's like, you know, biting his tongue. And I said, come on, Max, let it go. And finally he cracked up laughing. I said, good, I saved $10. I gave him the money anyway. The point I'm saying over here, I think, and one more thing, when you open the book, it's actually going to sound like somebody having gas. Today with the chips, here's an example. Like here, see the card?
Yeah.
Now imagine when you open the book, you can't do it on Amazon. You got a bunch of tushies and a horn and a trombone and like this. But it won't be that type of a sound. And I honestly, and you can quote me on that, that's going to be a big hit because that's for people of all ages. But there's also a very important message in there. And the message is that it's a human function. Don't be embarrassed if you have to, except there's a place to do it and a place not to do it. That's why Uncle Terry, like in the book, he said, he always at the dinner, he always walks outside. He's looking for frogs. I mean, that type of a humor. And I think it's going to be a hit because even myself, one night, last week, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in my computer, well, it makes us room in the computer, and I'm listening to all the different sound effects from fluctuating, for farts, whatever. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, it hit my funny bone, and I started to crack up. I didn't stop laughing. So my wife got up and said, what's so funny? And of course, I played it. She said, she went back to bed. The point of the matter is, I think it's a book that's going to be successful because it teaches the kids also there is such a thing as manner. There's a place to do it, the way not to do it. but it's a normal human function. Your mommy does it, your daddy does it, your uncle does it, your grandfather does it. In this case, the grandfather does it, which is me, and Max is the. You'll see the book. I can send you the transcript if you want to, but this is one book. I have other books like, for example, but again, it's 1,000 cents. It's like The Blinking Orchard. It's about a little girl who's lying in the room. She's dying. And she looks out the window and there's a beautiful orchard, actually a door wall, beautiful orchard. And every morning when she gets up, the orchard blinks at her. Actually, it's a bee that lands on the orchard, on the orchid. And many times orchid, they also have the shape of a human face, some of them. So every time she flies by, it's like blinking. She's at home because the doctor says we can't do anything for her. She's some kind of a rare disease, and he decided let her stay at home and whatever happens. One day the mother leaves the door open. The bee flies in and she stings the girl, and she yells out, "Mommy, mommy!" And the mother comes around again. She takes the bug or the bee, throws it on the floor and squashes it. Nothing. Next day, like a miracle, the girl wakes up like something happened. Doctors couldn't understand what happened. And the girl's supposed to be 7 years old. And basically, the explanation is that she told them about the orchard blinking, and they all went along with her. And she tells them, I knew that the orchard wasn't blinking. I knew it was the bee, but it made me feel good. It made me feel that somebody really cares. I know you all care for me. Then the doctor says, for whatever reason, God, nature, whatever you want to call it, the bee was always mixing the nectar and everything together. So when she stung you, that was the anti-venom that saved her life.
Yeah.
So miracles do happen.
And
So
that's what I want to do. And I'm so happy that you mentioned that. Because, yeah, I know. And I have to tell you, Amos, you know, you heard what Peter said about you. One of the things that I think is so important is that when you tell a story, it resonates with people. They need to know that humanity basically is wonderful. You know, people are good. And I think that Peter deals with a lot of people who have a lot of problems. But Peter, last but not least, when they walk into your office, can you recognize the ones that are really honest as opposed to the ones that are looking for the money? Do you know who is like one of the most wonderful people around? You have to unmute.
How's that?
Good now.
Okay. You know the way dogs and their masters tend to resemble each other? Well, the same thing is true with lawyers and their clients. Somehow, honest lawyers tend to have more honest clients, and dishonest lawyers, believe me, there's some. I mean, you know, for most of my clients, if I were to tell Amos, if I were to say, you know, I need you to lie on the stand, he'd get another lawyer. And there are some people that if I say, I need you to tell the truth on the stand, I can't have you lying on the stand, they get another lawyer. So, you know, in a way, people tend to reflect the values of each other. And it does come through and does come out. We were talking about honesty, and it's impossible for those that are dishonest. You see, what happens, I believe that when you live a dishonest life, when you're dealing dishonestly with others, you begin to lose the ability to tell the difference between truth and fiction. You can start believing your own lies. And so when you believe your own lies, you become a much better, much more convincing liar. But, you know, the fact of the matter is you lose your one opportunity. Here we are, we're born and we eventually die. We get one life on this planet. And if we are honest with ourselves and honest with our views, we get to actually experience life. We get to see what we see and deal with reality. For those that are living with their head in the clouds, they miss the opportunity, they miss the experience, and they miss their one opportunity in life to live through. One of the things, you know, Amos likes Donald Trump, my book, but you've want to make sure it's up on the screen.
I can see it, and it's
Okay.
called What Makes Trump Tick. And I
Right.
think that is another very important thing, because it's also about honesty too, right? And people who want to do good instead
Right.
of people hating each other. Isn't that true,
Well,
Peter?
yes. The fact of the matter is, I was very lucky. When I went to high school, I went to a private high school, New York Military Academy, and so did Donald Trump. And we're the same age. I'm 4 months older than he is, but you know, basically we're both seniors in the same class. He was my captain. He made me. He gave me the rank of platoon sergeant in his company, and I joke with people. I say I ran his first company for him, which I did for Company A at New York Military Academy. And we worked closely throughout the year. I probably was the closest person to him in that year. And I can tell you this, he was really liked and loved by just about most of the cadets. People that knew him appreciated him. He was a good guy. At the end of the year, the most popular went to another one of my friends, Celio Arriaga. But we wanted to give something to Donald, because nobody campaigned for it. It's not like normal high schools. Nobody was looking to get it. It was the rest of the class wanting to get it. We ended up giving him the prize of being the position of being the most, ladies' man. Okay, now, we didn't have anybody that could actually be a ladies' man because we had no ladies. We were all guys. You know, it was a boys' school. And there were a few ladies on the faculty, but in order to have a picture taken for the yearbook with a lady with a girl, we found a secretary in the academic building that he could take a picture with. You know, the fact is that why did we do that? We did it because we liked him. We did it because he was a good guy. But what we're looking at now and both sides of the political spectrum have use the same words, that we have two different realities. We have the reality of the left and the reality of the right. I like to look at things as objectively as I can. There's no way that I can understand how open borders is a good thing. There's no way I can understand how defunding the police is a good thing. And you know, maybe I'm not right. Maybe there's a way of looking at all these things, but I really think that they really delve in a great deal of self-deception for people, that they're able to believe whatever fictions they have built around these things. And it's interesting how Amos writes books that help people. And I wrote the book about a subject that I know well, which is Donald Trump. And in the book, I give some stories. This would have been a bestseller on the New York Times list. It's available on Amazon. What Makes Trump Tick by Peter Ticktin. So there's a play on the name. But you know, the fact of the matter is that I could have made up a story about how he, you know, diddled some kid in the showers. I could have made something up. Nobody could say it wasn't true. But I didn't have. I couldn't do that. I mean, his niece Mary made up the story about somebody who took the SATs for Donald, so they get a higher score. First of all, he was a bright student. He never would have had somebody take the SATs for him because he was bright enough to do his own. Secondly, there were only 100 guys in our class, and we all knew each other well, and our teachers knew us well, and we only got to take the SATs once in that. You know, there were no makeup times. If you were sick and didn't take it, you didn't go to college. Yeah. So you know, the SATs in my day, you know, were given only once. And I know that I took it with Donald Trump. I was there. Nobody took it for him. It would have been impossible for somebody to take it for him, because the teacher would have looked at the person and said, "You're not Donald Trump."
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I have to stop you because we're at the end of the show and we're going to be turned off in a second. But I want to thank the two of you because both of you have such interesting stories. And Amos, keep up the good work, okay? Keep on writing, keep on challenging those who you think are wrong. And you too, Peter, as a lawyer, you have so many opportunities to really tell a great story about Trump. And that is so interesting for me and for our audience. So I want to thank both of you for being on the Susan Brender Show. It is a total pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me, and I truly appreciate being here on your show.
My pleasure. Anytime we can talk.